Through the gray curtain of rain, it sat there. A Doberman puppy, no more than 2 or 3 months old, small enough to break your heart. Its black coat, once meant to shine, clung in wet patches, exposing a ribcage thin as brittle twigs. The tiny head drooped low, ears folded, the whole body trembling under the lash of the wind. Then my eyes stopped where my chest tightened like a fist. The front left leg was gone. In its place, a brutal stump, swollen, raw, seeping rainwater and pus into a foul mixture. Each shiver made the mangled flesh twitch, naked and unbearable to witness for more than a moment. It didn't cry. It didn't bark. It didn't even try to escape. It simply sat in the middle of the flooded road, brown eyes wide, fixed on the distant glow. Not pleading, not afraid, but hollow. The gaze of a creature that had surrendered, that had lived too long with pain, waiting only for an end. The rain drummed against its frail body, scattering icy needles across the thin fur. Each drop that struck the wound was another knife, and still it sat, enduring in silence. For that moment, time collapsed. The roar of engines, the hiss of rainfall, even the chill biting into my skin, all of it vanished. There was only one image left before me, a broken-legged Doberman pup, motionless as a forgotten statue. The whole world shrank into that merciless truth, and it crushed me from the inside. I looked closer. This wasn't an accident. This was cruelty carved by human hands. The cut was jagged, untreated, nothing but torn flesh left to rot. How long had it suffered like this? How many hours, how many nights in the cold rain had it sat here alone? The thought wrapped around my chest like a steel chain. The wind sharpened. Water weighed its fur flat against fragile bones, each tremor rattling its tiny frame. But the eyes never wavered, still locked on the light ahead. Death or miracle, it didn't matter. That gaze, wet and endless, cut straight through me like an accusation. I no longer saw just a puppy. I saw a living symbol of abandonment, of the cruelty humanity had sown. Too young to know what life was, too defenseless to resist what had been done, yet forced to carry pain no grown dog should bear. I swallowed hard. My throat was scorched. My eyes burned. My heart pierced clean through. I wanted to run to it, to scoop it up, yet I was terrified. Terrified that the fragile thing would shatter if I touched it. The air itself seemed to thicken. A puppy, far too small to even understand the word life, sat there like a collapsed monument, a breathing statue of human cruelty. No sound, no struggle, only silence so desperate it chilled the blood. And I knew, in that instant, that if I turned away, if I abandoned it too, this image would haunt me until my last breath. After the choke of shock from seeing the Doberman pup with the missing leg, I had to pull the car to the shoulder. My hands were still shaking on the wheel. Every breath felt compressed into a hard knot in my chest. And yet, in that same instant, something strange happened. That small, suffering thing started to reflect my own life back at me. I'm 38. I work in IT consulting in Cincinnati. From the outside, it looks normal. A stable job, a modest suburban house, Emily, my wife, a gentle elementary school teacher who stood by me through everything. But for months now, I'd felt like I was merely existing, not living. Morning after morning, I drove to the office, sat through meetings that smelled of nothing but jargon, synergy, efficiency, ROI. Then I went home in silence, forced a smile at dinner, watched TV, and slept like a stone. Repeat, punctual, empty. I'd been asking myself if life meant anything beyond chasing cold numbers. Today had been no different. I'd just finished a 3-hour meeting and left town, 2 hours from home. I was tired enough to take the back roads, to drive past harvested cornfields, hoping wind and rain would blur the edge of my boredom. But the stubble and stripped stalks only weighed on me more. Broken, leafless stalks stood in long ranks, an army routed, motionless under the sky. Then, in that bleak picture, the puppy appeared. Small, shivering. The stump of its leg was raw and angry. The sight shattered every hollow complaint I'd hoarded. Suddenly, I saw how petty my quiet despair had been while, right there on the road, a life was fighting for each breath. It hadn't chosen this. It had no say. It could only sit and endure, waiting for a hand to reach out or for fate to deal a final blow. I trembled, not just from anger at the cruelty, but because I felt small and selfish. How many days had I wasted whining? How many moments had I given to gray routines while this pup, barely born, had been thrown into hell? The rain thickened, hammering the windshield. I flicked the wipers, but they couldn't clear the blur that had settled behind my eyes. In the downpour, the image kept returning. A little skin-and-bone body, statue still at the road's center, those brown eyes gone flat with expectation of nothing. A life that had learned to accept death before it ever had a chance at living. My heart stung. My throat tightened. And then a voice, quiet, hard, rose inside me. If you drive away, that look will follow you for the rest of your life. It will haunt every meal, every mirror, every sleep. I gripped the wheel like it might slip away, breathed in until my ribs burned, then exhaled on a trembling hush. There was no turning back. In that moment, I had to choose. Walk away and carry the stain forever, or step out and face what I could not unsee. I looked through the windshield one more time. The pup was still there. Rain poured over the stump, making it tremble with each tiny shiver. It had no strength left to plead. The silence it wore hurt more than 1,000 screams. I opened the car door. Cold wind slammed my face and stole the heat from my bones. I didn't hesitate. I drew a breath hard enough to bruise, stepped into a puddle, and my shoes sank with a wet slap that echoed down the empty road. Step by step, I moved toward it. The world narrowed. No rain, no engines, only a promise forming in my chest. Whoever you are, whoever left you, today you will not die alone, not while I'm here. I walked slowly through the downpour, each step a dull splash as my shoes met puddles. The pup stayed where it was, motionless, like my coming meant nothing. Wind flayed its tiny body, made it shiver harder, but it didn't flinch away. The closer I got, the tighter my chest grew. The black coat that should have gleamed clung in ragged mats to its skin, revealing ribs like the slats of a thin cage. Its belly was hollowed out, caved in like an overturned bowl. It wasn't just wounded. It was starving, so hollowed that the whole dog had become a gaunt silhouette. I stopped a few paces off, breathing hard, rain stinging my mouth. My hand reached out, trembling, and still it didn't move. Those brown eyes lifted, wide, round, but emptied of fight, exhausted beyond measure. There was no wild panic you see in an animal backed into a corner. There was none of the bright, foolish hope puppies usually reserved for people, only resignation, an awful, quiet surrender. I sank to my knees. The rain lashed my face. Cold water mixed with the warm breath in my chest. From here, I could make out every wound. The left stump was swollen, ragged flesh torn and raw, like it had been ripped away rather than neatly removed. Dirt, dried blood, and pus plastered the fur around it. When it shivered, the whole body convulsed, and I heard a thin sound, not a bark, not a howl, but a fractured moan, coming up from deep in its throat. I moved my hand closer. It startled a little, but it didn't back away. For a breath, it closed its eyes and then opened them again, as if testing whether trust was still possible. I swallowed. My voice broke when I said, barely more than a whisper, "Hey, pup. It's okay. I'm here." Of course, it didn't answer. But the fact it didn't run, didn't turn its back, felt almost like an answer. I saw a rope around its neck, sodden with rain, biting into the thin fur. Red abrasions marked the skin beneath. Clear proof it had been tied, restrained, held with no mercy. I trembled. Not from cold, but from rage. Someone had done this. Someone had severed the leg of a tiny, helpless pup and left it out to the weather. A single question echoed in my head, relentless. What kind of person, what kind of twisted soul could do this? I laid my palm on the wet fur. My hand was burning. The pup's body was cold as stone. It tilted its head a fraction and let me. Its eyes didn't plead. They carried a quiet concession. If you want this to end, then end it. I've suffered enough. Those words weren't spoken, but I heard them plainly. I saw them in the way it sat, still as a statue, letting rain and traffic pass it by. A puppy who'd never known sunlit play had been turned into a receptacle for cruelty. I inhaled so hard my ribs ached. I knew that if I turned away now, that look would carve itself into me forever. Not a scar, an open crack that would splinter the rest of my life. The rain picked up, hammering my face. I said, firmer this time, a promise wrapped in a whisper, "No, I'm not leaving you. You're not dying alone today." I leaned lower, trembling, my hand coming close to its neck. That's when the rain, which had hidden it at first, finally gave up its secret. A warped scrap of cardboard, sodden and misshapen, tied around its throat with a rough strand of twine. I hesitated, then tugged. The cardboard flipped aside, and 3 crude, blurred words revealed themselves in the glare of the headlights, black ink run by the rain. "Don't feed him." My throat closed. My heart detonated in my chest. I staggered back, bracing a palm on the cold road to keep from collapsing. I read the words over and over, just 3 words, but each one felt like a knife. Don't feed him. Someone hadn't merely abandoned this dog. They hadn't only severed its limb and left it to the weather. They had written a spiteful command, hung it around its neck like a curse, ensuring that if anyone stopped, if anyone looked, this life would not be spared. They wanted the suffering to stretch on. They wanted it to die slowly, gnawed by hunger and despair. I broke. Tears mixed with the rain on my face. Not from weakness, but because the rage inside me was so enormous it had to escape as water. I couldn't fathom it. What kind of person could do this to a 2-month-old pup? A creature that hadn't yet learned fear or love, now forced to carry someone's hate. I grabbed the twine and ripped. The fibers bit into my skin until my fingers stung. The pup shivered, but it didn't try to bolt. When the final knot came free, the cardboard fell, heavy with rain. I picked it up and crushed it in my hands. It flaked to a wet pulp, like the vile instruction itself dissolving. I clenched my fist and swore, silent and absolute, that no one, no thing, would make you die like this. I shrugged off my heavy coat and wrapped it around that brittle body. It felt so cold I nearly flinched at the touch. It didn't struggle. It only collapsed against my chest and let out a shallow, exhausted breath. In that tiny motion, I felt an invisible cord tighten across my heart. It had entrusted its life to me, without knowing who I was. I held it close, feeling the faint, uneven beat beneath its hollow ribs. My voice shook as I whispered, "It's okay, little one. I'm here. No one will hurt you anymore." It gave a small moan, so slight but so real it burned into me. That sound was both pain and a fragile sliver of hope, alive and trembling. I rose, legs weak, water running from my clothes. My arms held the pup as if loosening my grip would make it vanish. The headlights behind us painted our silhouettes, two trembling shapes in the downpour. A worn man, a pup missing part of itself, and a single fragile thread of trust binding them together. Inside me, a mute roar rose, fury at whoever had done this, fury at a world that turned away, fury at myself. For the moment, I'd almost driven on. I glanced down at the shredded cardboard in the puddle. Though it had dissolved, the words "don't feed him" were seared into my head, a cruel little command that treated life like a pastime for the cruel. And yet that same command lit something in me. Today, I would not only rescue a dog. I would rescue the part of myself dulled by meaninglessness. I tightened my arms, turned back toward the car, and in the pounding rain, I heard the vow inside me echo clear as a bell. No more. The cruelty ends now. I'll write your next chapter. I sprinted back to the car, the pup cradled in my arms, so light it made me shudder. This was not the weight of a healthy puppy. It was the weight of something bled dry, as fragile as a handful of ashes. I opened the door and set it down on the passenger seat, still wrapped in the rain-heavy coat. It didn't struggle. It only gave a soft, thin whine, like a tired exhale, then bowed its head, eyes half closed. I started the engine. Tires slipped on the wet road as the motor roared louder than my pulse. Hands numb, I fumbled for my phone and typed, "Emergency vet near me." My screen blurred with rain and shaking fingers, but I found one, open 24 hours, 45 minutes away. 45 minutes. In ordinary times, it's a short drive. Now it felt like a lifetime stretched thin. I tossed the phone onto the seat and stomped the gas. Rain hammered the windshield. The wipers squealed in a frantic rhythm like a heart out of beat. I glanced to my right, where that tiny body lay. Motionless, breathing in tiny, ragged pulls. Every rise of that chest was a victory. I whispered, "Okay, come on, little one. Take one more breath." Silence terrified me. I feared that if I glanced away for 1 second, my breath would stop. So every few seconds, my hand left the wheel and rested against its flank, feeling for the faint rise. So small it was almost nothing. Each time I felt it, my chest both sank and soared, as if I were living on its breath. The road cut through dark fields. Street lamps were sparse, flickers of yellow swallowed by black. The world narrowed to two things, me and the broken-legged pup fighting to stay. The rain, the wind, the tires carving through water. Soundtracks to a film no one wanted to watch. I began talking, not sure whether to it or to myself. "You're okay. Hear me? You're not alone anymore. I'll get you somewhere safe. I promise." The words in the car sounded strange, heavy, binding. I knew it didn't understand the syllables, but maybe it could feel the truth under them. Resolve, mercy, pleading. Time stretched sticky as taffy. I rounded a bend. The car fishtailed slightly, but I tightened my grip and held steady. I wouldn't let a mistake take what little chance it had. Its life rested in my hands now. Failure was not an option. When the cold white sign of the vet clinic finally blurred into view, relief hit me so hard I nearly sobbed. The small emergency vet clinic sign glowed dim through the storm like a lighthouse in fog. I slammed the brakes, the car skidding on wet asphalt, and came to a hard stop right in front. I leapt out, opened the passenger door, and scooped the pup up, still swaddled in that rain-soaked coat. Its body was limp, the moan barely audible, like a last whisper. I hugged it tight and dashed through the rain toward the glass doors. A bell chimed over the antiseptic air. Inside, heads turned. A receptionist. A woman clutching a cat. An old man with a gray dog. All eyes were fixed on me and the bundle in my arms. My voice broke when I managed, "Please, help him." A woman in a green scrub top came rushing, pulling a small gurney behind her. When she saw the stump, professional calm dissolved into shock for a heartbeat. Then she nodded, firm. "Bring him here." "We'll do everything we can." I set him down, my hand lingering on the wet fur. For a sliver of a second, he opened his eyes and looked straight at me. Shaky, frightened, but asking, "Will you leave me?" I bent down, pressed my forehead to his, and whispered, "No. Never. I'm here." Then the emergency room door swung shut, leaving me alone in the antiseptic light, my heart pounding in the hollow of my chest as I waited. The emergency room door closed behind them and left me outside with my heart banging in my ears. I could hear footsteps, the clatter of metal, machines kicking on. The antiseptic smell filled the air, clean and strange. I sat down in the waiting chair, soaked through, hands still trembling. Every second stretched like a century. I stared at the door, waiting for it to open. My head replayed the images on loop. That surrendered gaze, the raw stump, the ruined cardboard that read, "Don't feed him." My throat tightened. My palms clenched until they hurt. After nearly an hour, Dr. Evans, a woman with tired but steady eyes, came out. She sat beside me, voice calm and blunt. "He's very weak. The infection spread deep. We'll have to amputate higher, up near the shoulder, to have any chance of saving him. The risk is high, but it's the only option." It felt like the ground dropped away. This pup, only months old, a shadow in my arms, is facing major surgery. Still, there was no other road. I looked into her eyes and said, hoarsely, "Please save him. Whatever it takes, I'll pay." They wheeled him through, and the door swallowed him in light. I followed a few steps until he was gone. Fear hit me harder than anything before. I hadn't been religious in years, but in that moment, I prayed. I prayed for a small life to be given another chance. Then the waiting began. Endless. I paced the tile floor, drank one weak cup of coffee after another until 4 were gone, and I still shook. I called Sarah, my wife, and cried through the story. She went quiet and then said only, "You did the right thing. I'm on my way." When Sarah arrived, a weight lifted a little. She sat beside me and laid her hand on my back. No words were needed. Her presence steadied me. We sat together and stared at that door like two people begging for a miracle. After nearly 3 hours, Dr. Evans came out again. She looked exhausted, but there was a small smile. I shot to my feet, heart about to burst. "He pulled through the critical part," she said. "We removed the infected tissue. He's weak, but he fought. He's going to live." I sank into the chair and sobbed uncontrollably. Sarah wrapped her arms around me, and we trembled together with relief. In that instant, the rage and pain dissolved, and only gratitude remained. They let us visit in the ICU. The room gleamed under white lights. Machines beeped a steady rhythm. Inside the stainless cage, he lay, small, bandages wrapped clean around his shoulder, an IV line in place, a tiny blanket over his belly. His head drooped. His eyes were closed. His chest rose and fell, slow and shallow. I sat close to the cage and slid my hand through the slot to touch his damp fur. He felt a little warmer. I whispered, "You made it, little man. You passed through death and came back." He didn't open his eyes, but his tail twitched. A faint, almost invisible flick. To me, it was a miracle. I cried again, this time from hope rather than fear. That night I didn't leave. They gave me a small chair. I sat all night, keeping watch over each breath, listening to the monitors, whispering promises into his ear. A home, sunny days, laughter, full bowls. I promised him and myself that from this moment everything would begin anew. In the weeks after surgery, my life changed completely. Each morning, instead of waking to the familiar silence, I heard a soft whimper followed by the uneven rhythm of 3 paws tapping across the wood floor. The little Doberman, now named Leo because his heart was strong as a lion's, would come find me, ears still folded but eyes brighter than ever. Leo was no longer the statue of despair I'd found in the rain. He learned to stand on 3 legs, first wobbling, collapsing into blankets, then pushing up again, defiant. I'd rush to steady him, but he'd shake me off, determination burning in his eyes. And one day, he strung 3 steps together. His tail lashed like a banner, as if shouting, "I am alive, I will not fall." Sarah and I broke down, clutching him in joy. Every small victory, a lick to the hand, a weak bark, an empty food bowl, became a triumph. And in each one, I realized, Leo wasn't just healing. He was teaching me about grit, about perseverance in the dark. As the wound closed and fresh fur grew over scars, Leo's true spirit emerged. He played, darted crookedly around the house, pressed his head into my lap to nap with tiny snores. He shadowed me room to room, never letting me drift too far. One afternoon, I took him to the park. Sunlight poured over the grass. Fear gnawed at me. Would other dogs reject him? Would he be left behind? But when the tennis ball flew, Leo lunged. 3 legs stretched, stride tilted, but eyes blazing. He was never the first to reach it, but he never quit. When at last his nose touched the ball, he lifted his head, tail thrashing as if to say, "See, I did it." People stopped to watch. They asked. Some sighed. A few cried. I told his story, and I saw something spark in their eyes. Awakening, sorrow, resolve. A woman whispered she would adopt from her local shelter. A boy hugged his own dog tighter. That's when I understood. Leo wasn't just changing me. He was changing others, too. In that moment, I looked back at my life, the dull days, the hollow meetings, the emptiness I had carried. They felt like someone else's story. Leo had torn that gray veil away, forcing me to see the world anew, with eyes that cherished each breath, each shaft of sunlight, each moment of love. On my desk, I keep a relic, the ruined cardboard scrap with 3 smeared words, "Don't feed him." I framed it, not to nurture pain, but as a reminder. Darkness exists, but light can win. What was meant as a death sentence became the start of a journey. And that journey taught me this. One small act, pulling over, opening a door, reaching out, can rewrite an entire fate. Today, Leo sleeps curled at my feet, his breathing even. He is no longer the broken pup in the rain. He is family. He is proof that love heals. I tell this story not only for Leo, but for all the silent creatures still waiting, for a hand, for a glance, for a heart that chooses to see. If you're listening now, I want to ask, have you ever saved a small life? If you have, you know that feeling, the moment when eyes once empty with despair spark with trust. If not, I hope when your moment comes, you'll stop. Because sometimes, a single second, a single hand reaching out, can turn a death into a life full of light. If you've stayed with me to the end of Leo's story, maybe your heart feels as heavy as mine did when I first held him in the storm. We've seen cruelty, but we've also seen a miracle, love transforming a curse into a beginning. I believe there are countless Leos still out there, fragile lives trembling in the dark, waiting for one hand, one look, one heart. And I'm telling you, you can be the one to write their story. Share this story. Let it spread. Let more people see that compassion saves. And if you've ever rescued an animal, tell your story in the comments. I want to hear. We all want to hear. Because every story is a lantern, and the more lanterns we light, the less room there is for darkness. Don't forget to subscribe, not just to walk with me, but to help build a community where silent cries are heard, where hopeless eyes can shine again. Leo found his home, and because of you, I believe many more will too. I'll see you in the next story, where hope always wins.